All right, all right, all right. How's everybody doing in the still of the night? My name is 12 Gauge, and this is my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. I thought I'd get on here and I'd talk about some recent findings that have obviously been causing these YouTube streets a little discomfort. I'm not going to get on here and read the documents. There's plenty of people that are doing that, and you can go to their channels and listen to them read the documents as they come out. I will fact check though enough to notify you guys if there is a bias in the reporting. But tonight I want to talk about the Barraclava, and it seems like News Nation has done a story on this, so I thought I'd talk about it. Here we go.
But let's start here. You cannot gauge a murder case by the sheer tonnage of the paper documents that it produces. But if you could, Idaho versus Kohberger really would be the trial of the century. Yet another metric ton of motions have just been filed or responded to, each one giving us another sneak peek at the main event, which is now less than 5 months away, the trial of Bryan Kohberger. We've been digging through all these documents throughout the day, and among the revelations is evidence tying the defendant, Bryan Kohberger, to the black balaclava mask that was spotted by a surviving housemate. The prosecutors say they have proof that Bryan Kohberger bought a black balaclava mask, quote, the same type of mask described by Dylan Mortensen, from a Dick's Sporting Goods store in January of 2022.
Okay, so there's a lot of individuals that want to dispute this purchase. They want to say, well, he bought it in Pennsylvania. It's cold up there. He also bought a K-bar knife sheath, and a sharpener. So these items were obviously part of the crime, and you have to ask yourself, were these items retrieved during the searches of the residence in Pennsylvania? Were they retrieved in the residence where he lived on campus? Because if they weren't received, like they didn't get them while they were going through his homes, his parents' home or his apartment. If they weren't, bagged for evidence, and he ordered these type of objects, which were described in this quadruple homicide, where are these objects? Where are they? Do you just lose a knife sheath, and a sharpener? Do you just lose a mask? I mean, circumstantial evidence is one thing, but if you had these for just the weather or for your outdoorsman type stuff, you'd still have them, wouldn't you? Because it hadn't been that long since he had ordered them or received them that the murders happened.
That's about 8 months before the murders. And speaking of Dylan Mortensen, the defense is now attacking her description of a mask-wearing intruder with bushy eyebrows. The state says that is Kohberger she's describing. The defense says, well, that witness, that roommate, that surviving roommate, was influenced by the detectives on the case. And they point to the fact that she admits she was drunk that night when she saw a stranger walking past her bedroom door. For what that's worth. In the earlier filings, prosecutors brought up this. Yeah, This is Koberger's purchase of a K-bar knife, which has never been found, and a knife sheath. That one matched the one found near two of the victims' bodies, and Koberger's DNA, the state says, is on that knife sheath. But the defense now claims that his Amazon purchase and his browsing history that showed he bought a K-bar knife and bought a knife sharpener and bought a sheath, a K-bar sheath. Well, the defense says that browsing history should be inadmissible because at the time he was living with his family and other users could have been doing the typing, searching, and the buying. They also say the knife and the sheath may have been part of a larger purchase with like camping supplies, including a tire inflator, a backpack, and bear spray. That is some good defense work right there. Because if you bought all those things, camping things, bear spray, tire inflator, backpack, and a K-bar knife in Pennsylvania, that would make sense. But if you can't produce that K-bar knife or the sheath or the sharpener, maybe not so much. Don't forget, he was also known to search, apparently according to the state, for a replacement knife and sheath.
And that's the thing right there. You know, if he was really gonna buy this stuff for hiking and running or whatever he did in his free time, there's nothing to say that if you buy these things you are instantly a murderer. But the fact out of the matter after the matter is you would have these individual items. And who's to say that the state doesn't have them? Because if we recall on the receipt of the item seized at his residence, there was a black mask itemized on the receipt. So, and there's another thing that people were saying is if that was indeed the balaclava, they would have listed it out as such. I mean, it always seems that if you find something, people always want to just debate you to say, well, if they found this, why didn't they put this? Why didn't they put that? There's nothing wrong with that. But in reality, you have to ask yourself, okay, well, I thought I could pull this up, but obviously I can't. But hopefully you can see it. Let me take down this video and put this up. Because I do want to show you guys some, proof rather than just running my mouth. I'll make this bigger for you. Hopefully you can see it. These are the items that were taken from his apartment. I mean, not his apartment. Pennsylvania residence. Description of item. Number one that was found and taken was a knife. We don't know what type of knife that was. We don't know whether it was actually the K-bar. Because that knife does not have the sheath attached to it, like you're going to see later on in another knife that does have a sheath. Number two, a book with underlining on page 118, AT&T bill for Brian C. Koberger, a Glock 22 Generation 5, .90 caliber, serial number, blah, 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 blah. Smith & Wesson pocket knife. See how they went into details with that? um, a folder. God, I can't read this writing hardly. Um, some kind of paperwork, an A6 laptop model number, green leafy substance in green container. Um, and there's white. Gosh, this is terrible writing. I can't read this. White something with Pispard. I don't know. Cell phone, power cord, 3 gloves, 40 caliber magazines, empty, books, black face mask, prescription, black gloves, one black hat, another black mask. So you talk about a black hat, you're talking about a black glove, you know. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. You know, I will probably do a better live on this evidence tomorrow or the next day in the evening. I just can't read it. I can't read what it's saying because the writing is so bad. And here's another receipt. Let's see if this one's even better. But the fact that he had these things at his residence do bring a little bit of concern, you know? Um, black gloves and black mask. And people say, well, you know, we had just got through the COVID epidemic and all that. Well, that's understandable. I still have black mask and stuff from that time frame. I have black gloves. Does it mean you're a killer? No, it does not. But in his case, you also have to remember also he is under indictment for this crime. It's not like he is free like we are. And they found this stuff at his residence and he can explain it away. If he can explain it away, then he'll be able to explain it away in trial. So if you see, let me, let me back up on that because y'all didn't probably see any of that. I just saw a blank screen. My bad. My bad. Um, it is early morning here for me, so I'm not at my best. You're like, what's going on, 12 gauge? What's going on? You got us looking at a blank screen. Here we go.
Something that hasn't affected him for many, many years. And whatever he's got left is like the fine motor skills, little things, not on that knife sheet. The time he was living with his family. And other users could have been doing the typing, searching, and the buying. They also say the knife and the sheath may have been part of a larger purchase with like camping supplies, including a tire inflator, a backpack, and bear spray. That is some good defense work right there. Because if you bought all those things, camping things, bear spray, tire inflator, backpack, and a K-bar knife in Pennsylvania, that would make sense. But if you can't produce that K-bar knife or the sheath or the sharpener, maybe not so much. Don't forget, he was also known to search, apparently according to the state, for a replacement knife and sheath. As for his medical conditions, we've got answers for that now, too. His lawyers say that his developmental coordination disorder makes it impossible for Koberger to be able to slash 4 people to death in such a short period of time. And the state has an answer for that. That a doctor says Brian's condition was a thing of the past, something that has.
So you just saw him walking with the police, and we've seen him walking in shackles and chains, and he seems to be perfectly okay. I mean, this individual seems to be able to run a 6-minute mile. Um, so it takes a lot of coordination to be a jogger, I'm sure, of any sort, or you'd be unable to really do that. That distance of time, jogging 6-minute mile, that's pretty good, I guess. I mean, it's not great, but to be able to do that time and distance, it has to have some sense of coordination, you know. And as you saw him walking there, I'm going to rewind that because it doesn't seem like he's having very much problems walking. And I've seen people that have leg irons on, and I've seen people with a belly chain and all that other stuff, and they struggle with that. It's not easy to walk in that kind of confinement. So let's watch him again walk with this stuff.
That K-bar knife or the sheath or the sharpener, maybe not so much. Don't forget, he was also known to search, apparently according to the state, for a replacement knife and sheath. As for his medical conditions, we've got answers for that now, too. His lawyers say that his developmental coordination disorder makes it impossible for Koberger to be able to slash 4 people to death in such a short period of time. And the state has an answer for that. That a doctor says Brian's condition was a thing of the past, something that hasn't affected him for many, many years. And whatever he's got left is like the fine motor skills, little things.
I mean, so if you watch him come into court, we haven't been able to see him walk into court in the last couple trials, but you just saw him walking in with a belly belt and handcuffs and obviously some leg shackles, and he was doing okay. Granted, there was a policeman to his side. That wouldn't have made that much difference. If he would have had that kind of issue with balance, he wouldn't have been as fluid as he was. Obviously, he seemed to be able to get through that just fine. Also, when he got out of the van, when they first arrested him and he was going into the Latah County Jail, he was able to walk just perfectly fine. It doesn't mean that he couldn't have done the crime, in my opinion. And Rondi says a 6-minute mile is good for an average runner. I don't think I've ever ran a 6-minute mile. I mean, it's kind of, pretty good, I guess. I don't know.
Not big things. I could go on, believe me, but I'm going to stop here and bring in the best resource I can think of in this story, and that is our own Brian Enton. Okay, Brian, let's start with the balaclava. Again, I couldn't believe it. Today, documents showing that they have the receipts. The state has the receipts for the black balaclava from Dick's Sporting Goods. However, if I'm the defense, I'll say this is Idaho. It is freezing in Idaho, and lots of people wear these balaclavas. Oh, and P.S., he bought it in January, in winter in Pennsylvania. I guess that makes sense, but it's really going to have to be add this to the mountain of evidence and see how the jury feels about it.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point that the defense likely will make. There was another just mountain of documents that were released late today that you mentioned that we're still going through. Reading the footnotes, a lot of these new nuggets, these bombshell nuggets are sort of buried in the documents, including this latest about the balaclava, which, by the way, just to be honest, I didn't even know what a balaclava was. At first, I was thinking baklava, like the Greek food, but no, it isn't.
That's what I was going to say, and I forgot. I got sidetracked. This drawing right here was drew by one of the surviving victims for surviving roommates. So when she drew this, doesn't it kind of look a lot like what's right here on the right hand side? It doesn't look like a COVID mask like we have been led to believe since this crime committed. People have told us, oh, the COVID mask. He was wearing a mask, dressed all in black. Now we come to find out that he was wearing this balaclava, hope, and in my opinion, because that makes a lot more sense. If it's covering up everything, you can't see the hair, you can't see the ears, you can't see the neck area, you can't see anything but the nose and the mouth. I mean, the nose and the eyes and the eyebrows, obviously. So if she drew that piece right there that's been unredacted, it can tell you a lot. It can tell you a lot because we've been told it was just a COVID mask. So now we found out different.
Mask, you see it on your screen. That's what it looks like. It's similar to like something that we would wear skiing or that you'd wear on a very, very cold day. And the state got all of the records, got all of the shopping records, has the receipt from Dick's Sporting Goods, and says that Brian Koberger bought that on January 10th, 2022, 11 months before the murders. You mentioned it. He was still living in Pennsylvania, and that they plan to bring this in during the trial, Ashley.
So, obviously question number one would be, that's fine if you bought the balaclava in Pennsylvania or if your family bought the balaclava in Pennsylvania, show it. Where is it? If they have a black balaclava in the, things that they seized from his apartment in Washington, that would be one thing, but I never saw one on the manifest. Did you?
No, I do not remember seeing it on the manifest. Granted, a lot of new things continue to come out. It's possible that we just don't have that document because we didn't even know that the balaclava existed or was part of this until today with this latest document dump. I also think this is going to be really interesting, and I'm curious whether this comes up. Since he was living with his family, there's been talk of a shared Amazon account.
This little piece right here is going to be interesting because to have a shared Amazon account. I've never shared an Amazon account with anybody, but I guess it can happen. So they're also going to be able to itemize who bought what with what kind of credit card, and the fact that a replacement or another K-bar was being looked at to be delivered after the murders. Whoever bought the first one obviously lost it somewhere, somehow, lost the sheath, lost the sharpener. So, what would make them be clicking on the Amazon for potential replacement if this wasn't a prized possession of the individual that bought it in the first place? I buy stuff all the time, taking a chance, whether it be clothing, jewelry, shoes, whatever it might be. but I give them away. And if I'm ever asked about those items, I can tell you exactly where they're at. The fact is that supposedly he doesn't have these items. That's a lot of doubt there, like if you present this to a jury, aren't they going to be asking themselves that? Where are these items? If you bought them or they were a gift, have a good night, Rebecca, or good day. um, where are these items? Where are these items? And that's the bigger question. Where are these items?
So how are they going to prove who actually bought the mask? Because you mentioned, I mean, if you live in a cold climate, could have been anyone in the family.
Sure, and I'm sure that anyone in the family wants to help his defense more than likely, so just produce the balaclava. And oftentimes, Brian, detectives can do amazing things by matching certain fabrics with certain lots from that particular purchase. So they've got that purchase, they've got the information on it. Maybe they could go deep and find out if they do provide a balaclava, if it is the actual one that was purchased. I've seen that happen in trials before. And by the way, those are weird things to have. I never had.
And that's another thing. If that balaclava had any fibers that were left at the crime scene. Hey, Carolyn, I was wondering what adagio was, and you corrected it. Buried in Idaho. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. It probably is. They're probably buried in Idaho somewhere, or they're at the bottom of a river somewhere. But like Ashley was just saying, it's very interesting that the individual would have these things and then not have them. That paints a lot of a doubt there.
Had one in my house until I married somebody who gets cold skiing and skis with one of those. But they are not every household has one of those, so they're unusual purchases. Speaking of that, go into that a little deeper, Brian, that the fact that the defense.
And like I've told you guys, as far as the state of mind, they call this the mens rea. The state of mind at the time of the premeditated build up to the crime tells you a lot. They tell you a lot. Um, so it tells you the state of the mind of the individual that was leading up to the crime. It tells you what the individual was planning due to the buy history, due to the eventual item that were seen by a witness at the crime. That kind of paints back the pieces that many people wanted to see but were not shown. Now they're being shown, and they're still questioning what they're being shown. So the fact that the prosecution is showing this purchase, it's showing the purchase of the K-bar, the knife, the sharpener, and the sheath. It tells you a lot. Tells you a lot there. You know.
Will say Brian Koberger was living at home in Pennsylvania and they were sharing, Amazon purchases throughout the family. So you don't know who was doing the typing or doing the purchasing. And that would extend to the knife sheath, to the knife sharpener, right? And any other purchases that they find unusual.
And this may be one of the reasons we may see Brian Koberger's family members, his parents and sister, called as witnesses during the trial. This has been brought up in some of the documents. This may be the reason why. There's been discussions in these documents that I've been going through about, well, if they get called as witnesses, they're not allowed to be in the courtroom before that. They may not be allowed to be in court during the trial because they're going to be witnesses. Why would they be witnesses? This could very well be the reason. The state may want to nail down, call them up under oath. Are you the one who ordered the knife? Are you the one who ordered the mask? And if they say no, process of elimination, they'll, explain to the jury that it was actually Brian Koberger.
And also, I'll go one further. Mr. Koberger, where's the knife? Mrs. Koberger, where's the knife and the sheath? Sister of Brian Koberger, where is the knife sharpener? If any of you lived in the same house and were purchasing off the same computer. I think we're well past those days, though, for many people, where you're sharing a household computer. Most of us have our own accounts and our own computers. But I will give the defense that it's just produce the things that suddenly don't exist that if a family member bought, I'm sure they would still have, 11 months later. Okay, another question for you, and that is that the defense wants some of the, I think the entire.
So that brings to mind the conversation that father and Brian must have had on the way home. You don't think that dad was asking if he saw him order this knife and he showed him this knife, you know, or was proud of it? You don't think that father was like, so where's the knife? Where's your knife that you bought? Where's the sharpener? Where's the sheath? You don't think that was an uncomfortable conversation on the way home? Or maybe he didn't bring it up at all because he was thinking, well, damn, if he killed 4 people and I'm in the car by myself with him, what could he possibly do to me? Maybe that's why they just drove almost straight through without stopping very long. I mean, it must have been an intense amount of time before he was arrested. That family was kind of held hostage because it seems like they're very intellectual. It's not like they're dumb, not like they were in denial, you know. Um, yeah, that's a good point, Alex. I think BK told his dad that it was Kopaka to deflect. That's a good point. I mean, anything's possible. We weren't in that car, but I mean, that would have been an uncomfortable car ride. I can only imagine.
Eyewitness testimony thrown out, right, from Dylan Mortensen. There's a couple of things. They say that the witness was drunk. They say it was dark. I've seen lots of cases that happen in the dark. And that millions of people have bushy eyebrows, and that her characterization of a witness with bushy eyebrows shouldn't count. This was interesting, though, and I didn't know about this, and maybe you could explain it. They say that the detectives influenced Dylan's memories about the eyebrows and the balaclava. What's that about?
Yeah, and that's what they're saying. And let me just tell you that because I read all of the filings, many of this back and forth is because the defense wants basically everything thrown out, it feels like, and they are trying everything they can and seeing what sticks. So I wouldn't read into it too much that they're trying to get Dylan's testimony thrown out, but they are saying and she did several interviews, so it's a little confusing. It's not like she just talked to police one time. But the defense is claiming that it was police who introduced the bushy eyebrows first, and that then she went along with that. We don't know whether that's really true. And in terms of this mask, this balaclava, I don't even know if I'm saying it right. That's how I think you say it. They are claiming that they also told her about the mask first, and then she went along with the mask. So that basically she may have been coaxed into saying those things. We haven't been able to listen to the interviews. Again, there were multiple. We haven't been able to see the full transcripts, so we don't really know whether or not that's totally true.
You are saying balaclava, right? You are definitely showing the fact that you're from Florida. The rest of us live with those things from Canada. But it was interesting. We just had up on the screen what looked like a piece of paper with a drawing on it, a very rudimentary drawing. I'm going to ask our control room to put that back up on the screen. This is apparently Dylan's drawing of the mask that she said she saw him wearing. And as
This is a good question, Caroline. She said, I still wonder why they drove back instead of fly back. Obviously, it's to get the car out of Dodge. That's a good question and a good thought. Rondi says, I wonder when the plant drive back with Brian was decided. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a good question. Don't know if Dad knew anything. I heard early on that BK was scared of flying. I think his dad rode to Washington with him, then flew home. He had a round trip ticket for holiday break. Alex, I'm sure the whole family knew. I mean, it's very interesting that the family would not know. I mean, if anything, they might have suspicion. I mean, we don't know if they had phone conversations with Brian. We don't know if Brian was acting a little unhinged during those times with the family. We don't know if he was having short conversations with mom. There was, things for concern. We don't know that. But if there was, if it does come out in trial that during the time building up and after there were differences, then that's circumstantial as well. But it's painting the state of mind. And I keep repeating that. The state of mind of a premeditated scenario or a murder. Yeah, imagine if the family did know. Like I said, imagine how uncomfortable it would have been having him home and even suspecting that there was something weird about the way he was acting or the way he kept cleaning his car, blah, blah, blah. Any of that stuff. Like it was rumored in the beginning that he wore gloves all over town, even when he went to the store. I don't know how factual that is, but that was rumored. Um, can you imagine watching your brother put on gloves before he went to the store? And he's never done that before? It's quite interesting.
Documentary as it is, it sure looks a heck of a lot like the balaclava that we were showing earlier as well. It looks exactly like that. So I don't know if the detectives coached her to draw that, but if she drew that before they mentioned balaclava, I think the defense has a tough row to hoe there, because that looks a lot like it. Even in your terrified state, if you're drawing that, that looks a lot like it. So the other thing, I was so fascinated when the defense brought up all these developmental disorders they say Brian Koberger has: OCD, autism, and then this other one, developmental coordination disorder. That's a DCD, developmental coordination disorder. And the defense made great hay about saying, Brian's got this. He can't possibly have the coordination or speed to be able to pull off the kind of murder that happened in that house. I mean, it was all of about 20 minutes or so. And they did the test. The police did the test. They parked, they ran from the car, they went through the house, they mimicked what the murders must have been like, and then they ran from the house and, pretended to get rid of all the bloody clothes and get back in the car, all in the prescribed time frame. And the defense said his condition makes it impossible for him to be able to do that. And then came the state's response to that. Take it away, Brian.
Yeah, and let me just read you this response because I think it's worth just reading word for word. I jotted it down here. This is what the state is saying, that the expert that the Koberger team said in relation to all this. To the extent defendant currently has any motor impairment, even according to his own expert, it affects only his fine motor dexterity and vulnerabilities in visual motion functions. The examples she uses for fine motor dexterity include when he had poor handwriting and trouble tying his shoes in the past. So the state is saying, wait a minute. All of a sudden, you have brought in all of this evidence that he's on the autism spectrum, that he's got OCD, that he's got developmental coordination disorder, something we hadn't heard anything about until recently. What does that really have to do with anything? And they're saying even your own expert is saying that is saying that it wouldn't have impacted whether or not he would have been capable of these murders.
Oh, wow. Tying his shoes and writing. I get that. Well, he didn't need to write his name that night, obviously. And unless he was wearing laces, he wasn't tying. Most often, pretty much, he was untying. And you're right, Alex. The love of a mom is huge. You know, she can she can pretty much talk yourself out of the obvious.
Yeah, that sounded like the air going of a balloon, for the defense pretty darn quickly. Fine motor skills, picking up something tiny and putting it into a little bottle. Gross motor skills, jamming a knife into four people very quickly and running from room to room. And there didn't seem to be any problems with his gross motor skills. Brian, great job. Thank you. I really appreciate you breaking that down. Keep your eyes out because those documents seem to drop at the most inopportune times. We appreciate this.
Yeah. Thanks, Ash.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.
Okay, so there we have it. You know, instead of going and reading all those documents for hours and hours, I I commend my cohort to do that. You know, to do deep dive into those documents. I am aware where those documents are if I have to go look at them to look up stuff or whatever. But unless it's something really that the mainstream media is not reporting on, I'm not going to do it. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of, understanding. And I've done it before. So if I have to do it again, I will definitely do it. But at this point, I think I'm just going to go with this kind of concept until I find something that needs to be presented and shown instead of highlighting every little word or whatever. I mean, you are smart enough to be able to read the document yourself if you really want to go look and see what is being presented. But it's interesting to me that I have this many people in the chat at this hour of the morning. That is awesome. I think that is really awesome. I thank you guys for being here, and that's all I really have for you right now. But I will keep you in the loop. And if you're available to chat during the late nights or early mornings, whatever time it is, whenever wherever you are, please jump in the chat. We look forward to you being in there, and I hope y'all have a wonderful whatever time it is, wherever you are. Be safe, and hope to see you soon. Maestro, cue that music.